welcome back to my channel, or just welcome if you're new. Sunshine Lorena. Okay, so this is going to be all the books I read in October. There's 19, guys. 19 books in October. Like, crazy amount of books, but I like to just caveat that with the fact that there were quite a few audiobooks in this, novellas and some middle grades, so it's not like I read 19 like 400, 500 page novels, you know, adult fiction, you know. So yes, all the vibes for October, all the spooky vibes for spooky season. I'm not going to talk that much. I'm going to try and be as concise as possible because it's a lot of books to get through. It is a lot of books to get through. And also, you know, if you want more in-depth, in the moment thoughts from what I thought of these, I did weekly vlogs throughout, and they're all on my channel. I'll try and remember to leave links here, and you can go and check those out. So yes, October, took part in Spoopathon, which is a month-long readathon, Magical Hopathon. So Spoopathon, sorry, was like a haunted house themed one, and you had two different prompts and like escape the house, which, guys, spoiler, I escaped once. I'm stuck in the house, didn't escape the second time, but no, I read a lot of books for that. And I also took part in Magical Hopathon, which was a Disney themed month-long readathon hosted by Rachel, and it was to celebrate Disney being 50 years old, the park specifically, sorry, not Disney himself, obviously. And then I also took part in Stabathon, which again was another like kind of spooky thrillery horror readathon, which was a week-long one. And at the very end I took part in Camp Weekend Ween. So a lot of readathons, which is why there are so many books on this list. So yes, concise, quick as possible. So I kicked off October by reading Coraline by Neil Gaiman, and this is a middle grade short quick read, which is the theme of October, guys. Yes, short quick read. I read this for Spoopathon and Magical Hopathon. You know what, guys, I'm not going to try and remember all of the ones what I read for what readathon, because that's going to make this video really long. So yes, Coraline. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 3 stars. It was the first time I read it, and I do want to watch the film. I said this back in October. I still not got to it, but I will. So in this one, Coraline and her mum and dad are in this new house. She's exploring, etc. And she knows exactly how many windows and doors there is. But the 14th one, I think, or was it the 13th one? I can't remember. Doesn't open, and then one day she tries it and it is open, and she goes through the door, and it's a house that's exactly the same as hers, except there is a different mother and father, and they want to keep Caroline there. That's all I'm going to say. There's good creepy vibes. It was really fun, a quick read. I really enjoyed Caroline's character and all the stuff that went on, and yes, I need to watch that film. Okay, then I finished reading June, which I started in September, and I think I mentioned this in my September wrap-up. Guys, 2.5, you know, sci-fi, really not my thing, and this kind of proved it. I'm pretty sure you all know what June is about. I'm not going to spend ages going on this since the film's just come out, and I really want to go and see the film. I've not been yet, but I want to go and see it. So yeah, not really for me, really long. It took me a long time to finish it because I started in September and took it into October. The audiobook really helped me get through it because I used the ebook as well, and yeah, that's that, guys. Conclusion, sci-fi, definitely not my thing, but I'll keep on trying, obviously, because, you know, why not? Maybe I'll find a sci-fi that's like 5-star one day. Maybe. Then I picked up The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez. This is a collection of short, kind of creepy horror stories. It's translated from Spanish into English. I read her other collection, Things We Lost in Fire, last October, which was a 5-star for me. This one was 3 stars. So just to quickly explain, Things We Lost in the Fire was written secondly, I think it was about 5 or 6 years after The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. However, Things We Lost in the Fire was translated into English first, and The Dangers of Smoking in Bed was only translated this year. So it was actually her first collection but her second English translation. I still think they're really great, creepy. I think the difference, she really, you know, developed her style with the second collection. The second collection, you very much felt she really put in the history of Argentina into it. Woven throughout, there were so many like references. It's one that I really want to reread. This I still think is really good, creepy. I think maybe if I hadn't read her first collection and I read this one, I don't know if I would have thought it, gave it a higher rating, you know, because I had that in the back of my mind. But I think it's still a really great collection. I can't really tell you what it's about because it's short stories, but different lengths, creepy horror vibes, you know. It's a good collection. I recommend still. Then I picked up Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones, and this was my second Stephen Graham Jones. I listened to this on audiobook from Scribd, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the narration and also how it was done in first person. So in this one, it's the end of summer, there's a group of teens and they decide to do one last final prank. So they take into the cinema a mannequin, like dress it all up to look like a person, and it's supposed to be this whole joke thing, except at the end of the film the mannequin stands up and walks out, and then, you know, stuff starts happening. The mannequin, you know, goes around, starts it's a slasher one, so you know there's some killing in this, and I'm not going to say much more than that. I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3-star. It was a really fun concept, and it's one of those ones that you're left at the end like wondering which was it. And I'm not going to say any more than that, but recommend. Then I read The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. I read my first Grady Hendrix in September, and that was Horror Store, which I really enjoyed the concept of the IKEA store, haunted house store. But in this one, it's actually like a slasher. What I like about Grady Hendrix books is they are of the horror genre, but he brings comedy and humour into them. Yeah, and that's what I really enjoy about them. So this was his latest one. I think it came out in summer. I give it a 3.5. So in this one, there's a group of final girls, and as you know, final girls are the ones left at the very end of this huge massacre, and they've like fought the bad guy, and they're sole survivor. So they have a support group with a therapist, so they can speak about it, because no one else obviously knows what it's like to be the sole survivor of like this massive massacre. So yeah, they've been meeting monthly for years and years and years. And then, you know, some of them are like kind of wanting to break away from the group, etc. But then what starts to happen is somebody starts stalking the final girls and is trying to pick them off one by one. And yeah, it's just about, you know, the final girls, you know, doing what they do best, you know, trying to like figure out what's going on and, you know, not get killed, basically. But it's really good. I didn't work out who it was going to be. I didn't work out the reveal, etc. So yes, I was kept in there, intrigued. Great. And I definitely need to pick up more of Grady Hendrix. I think the next one I'm going to do is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I think that's the next one I'm going to pick up. That's such a long title. Anyway, next book. We don't have time to be rambling on about other books that we did not read. Then I picked up a classic Goosebumps. I completely forgot about them until I saw like Gavin from How You to Train Your Gavin read them all in September. Read them when I was a kid, watched the TV show, so I picked this up on audiobook, and it was the very first one, Welcome to the Dead House. I gave it a 3.5, so many throwback vibes. So in this one, it's, you know, a family, mother, father, brother and sister, and then the dad gets a letter. It's told basically he's inherited a house from this great uncle. He doesn't remember who the great uncle is, but you know, free house, obviously gonna go and move there, thinks it's a great idea. And then, you know, so they move there, and then the kids start making friends with some of these other kids in the town, and then like there's some weird stuff going on. I'm not gonna say much more than that, because I don't want to ruin it. It was a really quick, fast-paced audiobook, was like 3 hours long, listened to it faster, which is why I managed to read so much in October for this types of books, guys. That's why. 3.5, amazing. Then I picked up Blankie by Keelan Patrick Park, which was a short like a horror novella. I picked up Sour Candy by him back in summer. He is really great at writing these horror novellas. He really gets like the horror through and the story all done up in so many short pages, so that's really great. So in this one, Blankie, there is our main character. He's a man. I cannot remember his name, guys. Cannot remember the main character's name. Sorry, but he is depressed. He is drinking. I think if I remember correctly, he lost his job. He's at home. His wife has left him, and she's moved in with their parents. And it's because they had a child. They had a baby, and the baby died. So things, you know, just kind of spiraled out of control. So he's in this position where like he's basically lost everything. So he's walking around this house, and you know, and he goes into the room that they had for their baby, and he sees on the floor her blankie, which is very strange because they buried her with that blanket. So how did that blanket come back? You need to read it and find out. I gave it a 3.5. Then I read Bird Box by Josh Mallerman. This was an audiobook. Again, I got it from Scribd. Scribd honestly really helped me choose my books for these readathons. Like otherwise, you know, yeah. Anyway, listen to this in audiobook, and this experience of an audiobook, I give it 4 stars. But the audiobook, so good. So the reason why I think I really enjoyed this one, I don't know, there was something missing for it to be like a 5-star, but my actual whole experience was so enjoyable with this one. And so I have aphantasia, where, you know, I can't really picture stuff when I'm reading, etc. So certain things, you know, certain books and stuff is quite difficult for me to imagine anything. However, in Bird Box, it follows our main character Mallory, and it is, you have 2 timelines. So you have the present one now, and you have the one where it's looking back at how things happened and how they got to this situation. So it's a bit of a dystopian. It is a horror, thriller, psychological book, you know. So there starts being news reports, etc., and there's something that no one knows what it is, but people are like end up killing themselves. So they find out like whatever this thing is, when you see it, you end up like violently killing yourself. So you can't go outside, you can't look at anything outside, etc. So it is, the second timeline is 4 years later. So the first timeline, she finds out she's pregnant, and it's kind of this build up of something that happens in that timeline. I'm not going to say what, obviously, because spoilers. So there's that element, and then there's 4 years later, and she has a boy and a girl, and she's decided it's finally time. She's trained them enough. She's trained their ears because, you know, they have to wear blindfolds when they go outside to get water, etc. So they don't see whatever this thing is, which I find really freaky, not knowing what something is. And I think this one really kind of freaked me out, because I don't usually get that scared at these type of books, but I was, you know, it freaked me out, guys, freaked me out. So she's trained the kids to like listen to all these little sounds, and that's what I enjoyed about this, is the fact is that they don't know what's out there when they're wearing these blindfolds. So it's descriptions of sound, and you're also following along, like, what was that? Is there something there? Is something coming to get them, you know? So for me, great experience. So yes, she decided it's finally time. She's trained their ears well enough. They're going to take a boat and go down the river 20 miles to get to a place that they believe is like a safe place for them to go and live with other people. And that is the premise, guys. I really enjoyed it. It was adapted to a film and for Netflix a few years ago, and I watched it a few years ago, and it freaked me out when I watched it as well. I don't know what it is, I just don't like not knowing what something is. I think that's something that really kind of gives me the fear, is not knowing. It's the not knowing, guys. There is a second one that came out this year, last year, I can't remember, which I definitely want to do, and I will do that on the book again. Fantastic, guys, fantastic. Then I picked up The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. I read this as part of Chloe Reed's book club. And this one is a non-fiction. It was following H.H. Holmes, the serial killer, and also the timeline of because it all happened during the World Fair and the build up to World Fair. So you also have the other side where it's about the World Fair, the building, the architect, I don't know why I said that really weird. So yeah, it's following these two timelines. If you don't know, H.H. Holmes is a serial killer, and he kind of built this hotel where he murdered people during the World Fair, basically. So that's, you know, it's a non-fiction, it's weaving bits and pieces in of the two timelines. I give it a 2.5 stars. I really enjoyed the H.H. Holmes chapters. I felt they were short, and the fact is, I knew that there's also these two elements, but I was expecting it to at least be 50-50 between the two parts. It was not. It was 70% World Fair architect stuff, and then about 30% H.H. Holmes. And a large part of the architecture World Fair stuff was quite dry. It was boring. I felt like he was kind of fluffing it out to make this book much bigger. The last part, when they actually got to the World Fair on that side, I found that more interesting actually, and I enjoyed it a bit more then. But yes, on the cover, you know, right front and center is H.H. Holmes' face on there, so I felt like, you know, you were led to believe that there was going to be more about H.H. Holmes, and yes, I mean, like I said, it was interesting. It's just, yeah, it wasn't everything I was expecting it to be. Then I picked up Southern Magic Sweet Tea Witches Mysteries #1 by Amy Boyles. This was my trick book at my trick or treat prompt on Spoopathon, where, you know, I had to get people to vote. So I have recently, like in summer, I got into cozy mysteries. I really enjoy them. I think they're fun, they're cute. Yeah, really enjoy them. They're quite fun, you know. So in September, I tried my first paranormal cozy mystery. Did not like it. So I chose this as part of my trick because I was thinking, first of all, that other one by a different author, terrible. And I actually retrospectively, after reading this one, went back and downgraded that to 1.5 because I realised that I was being generous. That was also the way that the author wrote that. So I was like, you know, I knew I had to pick up another one to see if it's for me, and the conclusion is Paranormal Cozy Mysteries, not for me. I give it 2.5, so better than last month's one. But yeah, I mean, they're very light on the actual murder mystery element that goes on, I found, and I kind of enjoy unraveling the mystery, whereas, and I don't know if it's because they're first in the series, etc., but, you know, it's them finding out, they didn't know they were a witch, so it's them discovering this. It is them also, there's some snarky cats always apparently in these books. They're, you know, discovering family members they didn't know. They're discovering how to be like a witch, etc. So there's a lot of other things going on, and the mystery part is very minor, I find, and that's kind of what I like the cozy mysteries about, is the mystery element, and it's lacking in this one. Amy ends up inheriting a familiar shop, and she didn't know from this family. She didn't know. So she ends up, anyway, the whole thing happens. She ends up in the town, and she absolutely hates animals. So it's like she's like literally the worst person to have inherited a familiar shop to help witches and wizards find their familiars, and because obviously it involves working with animals. So she's like discovering she's a witch, being a witch and stuff, but then there's obviously a murder, and then she ends up kind of helping the guy doing the private detective work on it, to work out who the murderer was. But like I said, so much other stuff goes on, and the murder mystery part is very, very light. So yeah, not for me. Moving on, I then picked up Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This was my second Riley Sager. I read Home Before Dark back in summer. I really, really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4-star. Yeah, 4-star. Yeah, really enjoyed it. In this one, we have our main character, Jules. She loses her job. She's like made redundant. Her boyfriend breaks up with her, and because they were living together and it's his like kind of a flat apartment, she ends up, you know, not having anywhere to live either. So it's on the couch of her friend, so she's having to look for a job and look for a place to live. And then, you know, she sees this advert and basically goes for a job interview. She does get it, and it's to be an apartment sitter in this really fancy building called the Bartholomew. It's like really famous, like, you know, everyone's like so intrigued because it's so mysterious, because like it's like rich people that live there and they keep everything secret. And so they have, apparently there's some weird rule that the property can't be vacant more than a month, so they have apartment sitters whilst, you know, they're trying to sell properties, etc., so it isn't vacant longer than it should be. So they're like, yeah, you know, it's for 3 months because they're trying to sell it, etc. The person, I think, has moved away, or to Europe or something, and yeah, we're going to pay you 12,000 for the 3 months. And it's a bit like, 12,000 to apartments, so you give them somewhere to live but pay them $12,000 for 3 months. Yeah, you know, that does that not seem weird to you? I do love thrillers for these types of things that happen, like, why? And even her friend is like, isn't this a bit weird? And then there's also these weird rules that, like, they can't sleep away from the apartment overnight, they're not allowed to have anyone over, so yeah, there's a lot of weirdness going on, and you know, they're not allowed to interact with the people living in the building, because you know, they're apartment sitters, they can't bother, like, you know, the fancy rich people basically. And yes, she ends up, you know, kind of speaking to there's a couple other apartment sitters, but after a couple of days one of them goes missing, and Jules is very, like, concerned because it seems very odd how everything's happened. Other strange things start to happen, and she does a bit of, like, kind of investigating, etc. I don't want to say much else, but yes, I really enjoyed it. Didn't see that twist coming. It wouldn't have worked it out, but yes, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, great. Another great one by Riley Sager. Then I picked up My Full of Birds by Samantha Schweblin. Again, this was another translated kind of creepy horror short story collection, actually translated from Spanish as well. I don't know which Spanish speaking country she is from. I don't think it's Argentina like the other one. I can't remember which Spanish speaking country it is, but it's translated from Spanish into English. Anyway, so it's kind of hard, again, can't really tell you much about it, but there's some great creepy vibes in these stories. Particularly my favourite one was My Full of Birds, one that was titled My Full of Birds. That was really creepy, guys. That was creepy. It was written well. I give it 3 stars. Yeah, I can't really say much else because, you know, short story collection. I then picked up, guys, I'm starting to get thirsty here. I'm speaking too much. I then picked up the second Goosebumps book, Stay Out of the Basement. I gave this one 3 stars. Again, audiobook, I listened to it, so it was really quick. In this one, there's a family, the dad is a scientist, a plant scientist, and yeah, he tells the kids to stay out of the basement because he's, like, busy doing his kind of some experimenting on plants, etc., which, you know, obviously the kids don't stay at the basement, do they? Why would they? So yes, there's some interesting thing that happens with these plants. I'm not going to say something that's much else, but I enjoyed it, not as much as the other one though, but I did enjoy it. Then I read another Goosebumps, number 3. I've decided to kind of do them in order when I pick them up, because you don't have to, but I kind of like, you know, seeing how the series develops, you know? And it's by R.L. Stine, because I don't think I actually mentioned that. So anyway, third one, Monster Blood. Our main character is a boy, I can't remember his name, and his mum and dad, they're going to be moving cities, so they need to go and look for a place to live, etc. So they end up leaving him with the great aunt, because, you know, they don't want to be bringing him told while they're trying to, like, look for places and move, etc. The great aunt is actually deaf, but she doesn't know sign language. It's a little bit weird, a little bit of a weird situation. She's been deaf for like 20 years. And yes, anyway, he makes friends with a girl in the neighbourhood, and they end up going to this really old toy store, and he ends up buying this can of Monster Blood. It was, like, really fun to play with, to begin with. Like, it's sticky, you throw it, etc. But then it starts to grow and keeps on growing. And yes, some weird things start to happen, as per usual, in these ones, and it's a case of them trying to, like, work things out and sort the situation. So yeah, 3 stars. Then I picked up Goosebumps number 4, Say Cheese and Die. This one I gave 3.5, so, you know, it's back on the par with the first one for me, at least. In this one, there's a group of kids, they end up going into this abandoned house. You know, kids like doing stuff like that, don't they? And one of them, he finds an old camera, and he takes it. And when he gets back home, like, his dad has bought a new car, and he takes a picture. It's a Polaroid camera, by the way. He takes a picture, it comes out, and in his picture, the car is absolutely wrecked. Like, it looks like it's been in a car crash, and he's just like, what on earth is going on? This is so weird. But anyway, you know, things go on, etc. But, you know, he takes pictures of other things, and it becomes apparent that the camera is either predicting the future or is causing things to happen in the future. And again, it's one of those things, trying to work it out, because something happens, and no one will believe him the truth of what happened. So yeah, that's it. Enjoyed that one. I really enjoyed it. Then I picked up Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. I picked this up as part of Austen Alone being hosted by Kiara Foster. I gave this one 3.5. So it was on par with Sense and Sensibility for me, but didn't like it as much as Pride and Prejudice. In this one, our main character is Fanny, and I think a lot of people don't get on with this one as well from what I've seen. Fanny is very different from the other Jane Austen characters. I haven't read anything past this one. I'm reading in publication order, so I don't know about the other characters later on, but from Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, Fanny's a very different character from the other women in those ones. Fanny's very reserved, quiet, meek, doesn't like rock the boat, you know, it's very like does everything as should be, correct, etc. So she's very, very different from our other like heroines, main character, female characters than the other ones. In this one, she gets taken in by aunts and uncles, etc. So her family, her branch of the family, is not very well off. So Fanny gets taken in by the aunt and uncle when she's about 10, I think. So she is kind of given some extra, I suppose, education, a little bit more advantages in life. However, they still very much treat her as below them, you know. She's very much always aware that she is not of the same class as them. I didn't really like the treatment of Fanny, but I get it. I get, you know, the time it was written in and how people were then. I you know, wasn't a fan of that. And I wasn't a big fan of how her story wrapped up. In the end, she is shown kindness, etc., from some family members. And yeah, it's a little bit hard to kind of explain the whole plot in this one because it is different from other Jane Austens. And yeah, she, you know, people start treating her nicer and she gets, you know, a little bit better treatment. But yes, 3.5, I still enjoyed it, but yeah, I didn't like it as much as Pride and Prejudice, which I really like that book. And I didn't really know much about Mansfield Park going into it because I'd never watched an adaptation of this one, which I'd like to see and see if my opinion changes maybe watching it on the screen rather than reading it. Okay, then we're getting to our weekend ween books, guys. So I picked up The Troop by Nick Cutter. This one I'd seen, you know, a lot of people have spoken about it. I've heard Gabby like raving about it as well because Gabby was hosting, one of the hosts for it, Camp Weekend Ween. And I ended up giving this a 4-star. This one, I mean, it was written well. I've got to admit, the horror in this one was written well, but I have determined that body horror isn't really my thing. I was really like certain parts of this, but I can't fault the writing. I cannot fault the writing. It cannot be a 5-star for me because obviously it wasn't something that I particularly enjoyed reading, if you know what I mean, but it was well written. It was a good story. In this one, there's a group of Boy Scouts. So they have some annual trip to this little island. It's like off the coast, and it's like a bit of a reserve. So you have to have special permission, and they go there for to camp and do some stuff for their badges, you know, Boy Scouts. So when they're there, this man like turns up on the shore, comes into their camp, which, you know, there shouldn't be any other humans there. But it's very obvious and apparent that he's sick. And the Boy Scout leader, Tim, is actually a doctor. So he resolves to try and help him, but like trying to keep the kids away, etc. Because he knows something's going on weird with this man's illness. And it's not like anything he's seen before. And yes, things don't work out well. And, you know, this illness starts to spread. I'm not going to speak about it or like kind of spoil it. But yes, it's about them then, you know, being on this island with this illness, this sick man, etc., and the events that happen after that. Well written, body horror, not for me, guys. I then picked up The Last Final Girl by Stephen Graham Jones, and I was really disappointed by this one. I ended up giving it 2 stars. It disappointed me because I had enjoyed previous books by Stephen Graham Jones. In this one, I listened to the audiobook, which I don't know if that didn't help. I don't know if it would have been better being as an ebook or an actual physical book. The style that it's been written in, it was like a screenplay. Like there's directions, like from their POV, blah, 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 blah. And yes, I didn't really get on with that style. I didn't gel with it. I didn't feel connected to the characters or the story because of how it was told. I think if it had been written as a traditional novel, I would have enjoyed it, but that format just, I felt so disconnected from it. In this one, it's in this town, so we have our final girl. She ends up surviving the horror that Billie Jean caused, killing all like our homecoming court. It's set in high school, by the way. And then Billie Jean, obviously not done, so this is where we pick up on it, and she forms like a new homecoming court, and you know, Billie Jean is around, you know, causing trouble, doing what he does best. You know, it's a slasher book. And yes, and it becomes apparent that this is going to be a fight for the last final, to be the last final girl, basically. And yes, like I said, if it'd been written in a traditional format, I probably would have liked this more, but I give it a 2-star, guys. I was disappointed, really disappointed. And then the last and final book, the 19th book of October, was Cujo by Stephen King. So this has been my 4th Stephen King this year. I've read 7 Stephen Kings in total now, 7 I think. And this, I would have to say, is my least favourite. I give it a 3 stars, so it's not like it's a bad book, but it's the least favourite of the ones I've read so far. It's not one that you really hear people like talking and raving about. And yes, you know, you hear them talking about Misery, Carrie, The Shining, It, The Stand, etc, etc, but Cujo isn't one that you really hear people, you know, talking about. So in this one, and all I knew going into it is that there's a dog called Cujo, he gets rabies, goes rabid, and then there's like people get like, you know, trapped in a car, and that's all I knew. So it's like following the horror of like this rabid dog and what he does. And there's parts of it that I really enjoyed actually, that you get a little bit the perspective from Cujo, and like what's going on in his head. And I just wish that there was more of that, because I think I would have enjoyed the book more and give it a higher rating if there'd been a bit more than that, because it was really interesting. So I think it would have been good to have like a dual perspective between the people and then the dog, from both their perspective of what's going on. I would have liked more from Cujo, but I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a good one. And that's it. That is all 19 books that I read in October. This is going to be a long video. I think it's going to be like 25 minutes, guys. So if you've watched this long, thank you so much. Leave like a knife emoji for, you know, slasher, because I read quite a lot of slashers this month. Let me know what you read in October. How many books did you read? If you have any recommendations for any like, kind of creepy horror books, leave them down below. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble on about all of these books. Comment, like, subscribe, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.